I have a new guest, and I'm excited to bring her on. We are joined, and I want to make sure I get the name correct, Marwa Osman. Marwa Osman, she's a journalist, TV show host for Press TV, um, also university lecturer, political commentator, and you had, I think, political psychic in your bio.
Hi, Jamal, how are you? It's Marwa Osman, but I say it Osman for people in the West who say correctly, but they often say Osman, which is
Osman.
a bit of an Irish or a German name, but it's not. It's an Arabic name, Osman. Thank you for having me. And it's the TikTok politics psychic. It's the TikTok account which I never use because every time I upload a video there, TikTok just deletes it. So what's the point? I just have it. I don't use it anymore. So how are you doing?
I am doing fine, and I'm happy that you could join me. I really am. Thank
All
you
right,
for joining
pleasure.
me, by the way. First time guest,
My
always
pleasure.
appreciate
Thanks for
it.
asking. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
You had a video where you were breaking down what was taking place in Lebanon. I am fascinated by what is taking place in Lebanon right now. The U.S. seems to have gotten the prime minister to pass legislation in order to disarm Hamas. I'm sorry, Hezbollah. And in the context of disarming Hezbollah, it's like, okay, well, Hezbollah, A, is a political faction in the country itself. They're the only resistance that's standing up to incursions by Israel. And I don't know how you do that. Like, I don't know how the government expects to do that. This is obviously a plot by the United States and Israel working in coordination with what seems to be a puppet prime minister. What is going on with this? And A, do you think this is going to be successful? Give us a breakdown of what's happening in Lebanon right now, because it seems like they're trying to destroy Lebanon, or at the very least making it prey for other external forces.
Well, it is nearly impossible, as you are saying, but I'll say why, and I'll say why this happened with a bit of in a fast way. I'll just briefly say what happened historically in Lebanon that would lead up to this, because it's not new. The call for disarmament, which usually comes from the invaders and the occupiers, and this time it comes also from the political foes of Hezbollah within Lebanon themselves, who usually would cite their disapproval of Hezbollah's weapons, but now they are completely on the same page with Zionist Israel. It's not new. It's actually ever since Hezbollah came to be, basically in 1982. The very first call to disarm the resistance was in 1986, literally in the midst of the Lebanese civil war. And while the Lebanese civil war was raging, we had Zionist Israel invade Lebanon all the way to the capital, Beirut, in 1982. And in 1983, they committed the Sabra and Shatila massacre after they asked the Fatah organization back then, which is the Hamas of 1982, because they were the resistance back then. They asked them to disarm. They were naive enough to believe the American, if you will, promises of safety. And they did disarm, and literally the second week, Sabra and Shatila massacre occurred, which took the lives of 3,200 civilians, most of whom were Palestinians, and 1,200 of whom were actually Lebanese Shia, which are part of the community that now backs Hezbollah, because they lived in the same area. And it was done by Israeli forces, joined by the Phalanges in Lebanon, which is a political / militant faction in Lebanon, and the Uwed, known as the Lebanese forces, not the Lebanese army. It's a political / militia called the Lebanese forces, headed by Samir Jaja, who was put in prison, by the way, after the civil war ended, because he committed also massacres against Christians. Being a Christian himself, he killed people in churches in Lebanon because they disapproved of his way of control. So that was happening in the midst of the civil war. And there were talks back then saying that there should not be any resistance, despite the fact that Zionist Israel got all the way to Beirut, to the capital. They were literally sitting having coffee at a very important, back then, very well-known coffee shop called the Wimpy's, and there happened a very also memorable resistance operation, where one of the resistance factions of the Communist Party killed a number of the Israeli soldiers. So it's well documented. So this call for disarmament happened with the Fatah organization, which is a Palestinian resistance faction that used to fight the Israelis, then moved to Beirut, then was kicked out of Beirut, then the massacre happened, then they dissolved later on. Hamas is, Mahmoud Abbas is currently the head of Fatah, meaning he's I think he's the left side shoe in the feet of Israel at the moment.
Yeah.
But moving forward, what happened with the resistance? The resistance, which came to be because of the occupation. And it didn't start in 1982. Hezbollah started in 1982. But the resistance in Lebanon started in 1936. 36, when the gangs, with the Haganah gangs, terrorists, which were of the Jewish identity or Jewish religion, also very well known, documented Haganah terrorists by that time, because they also killed Americans and Britons in occupied Palestine. They were raiding Lebanese towns in South Lebanon, and we had resistance since then. And predominantly, the people who live in South Lebanon, if you look at the map, the people living in South Lebanon are predominantly Shia, meaning Muslims of the Shia sect. But there are Sunnis and there are Christians, both Orthodox and Catholics, who also live in South Lebanon, but the majority of the residents are Shia. So the resistance started back then. Then we had the resistance of Jabal Amil, Mount Amil, which is a very well known, also historically, you can search more about it. Then came the resistance of the Communist Party. Then came the resistance of the Amal movement by Sayyid Musa Sadr, who was kidnapped and killed in Libya during the Lebanese Civil War. And he was the main big starter of the resistance in the Shia community in Lebanon. Then came Hezbollah 1982, headed by one Subhi Tfaili, who was later on named to be a traitor, and Sayyid Abbas al-Musawi became the Secretary General of Hezbollah until 1992, when Israel killed with an Apache, assassinated Sayyid Abbas al-Musawi in one of the towns in South Lebanon while he was performing the duty of going to a funeral and performing respect to fallen martyrs who were killed by Zionist Israel at that time. Sheikh Raghib Harb and his friends. So Sayyid Musa Sadr, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, was killed with his wife and his child in 1992. And then the Council of Hezbollah announced that Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah will be the now Secretary General of Hezbollah. Now, 1992 till 2000, Israel occupied Lebanon. 1982, physically occupied Lebanon. From 10 years later, 1992, when Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah became the Secretary General of Hezbollah, he was able to build this massive resistance that became the head of the axis of resistance in West Asia. Fast forward till the year 2000, so it's 8 years later, we have the full liberation of South Lebanon. But what happened in those 8 years? Resistance being with very little, not even compared to 3% of what Hezbollah has now. Just Kalashnikovs, some artillery shelling. There are videos, you can find them online, where Hezbollah fighters would walk for miles, for days, to get to certain bases, occupied bases by the Zionist Israelis, to fight them, to detonate the bases. That was active resistance, day by day, man to man. Okay, the year 2000, Israel was like, that's enough. We can't take it anymore. They left because of the resistance. 2000 to 2006, there was new calls saying, that's all. The south of Lebanon is no longer occupied. Why do you need the weapons? It's like, okay, we put the monster outside the house. Let's just give out the knives, because the monster will not attempt it again. Not as if for the past 22 months, Jamal, that Zionist Israel has been committing a genocide in Gaza, and now they are planning to even widen that genocide even more by occupying Gaza. Not as if that Zionist Israel, without having Syria not throw a bullet at it for 55 years, and still, when the Syrian regime fell on December 8th, Zionist Israel went all the way. They are now 8 kilometers away from Damascus, the capital of Syria. And Syria never even fought.
I just want to make sure that the audience knows what you're pointing out. It's you've kicked them out, they're out, and they're like, hey, since we're gone, why do you need the weapons? Trust us, we will not try to invade again.
No.
We're very good, honorable
by the way,
people.
Jamal, during that time, until the liberation in 2000, we had many massacres. We had the 1993 massacre in Beirut. We had the 1996 Qana massacre in South Lebanon. Thousands of people were being killed by Zionist Israel throughout those years. And in 1996, people were killed while they were held. They actually went into the camp of the UNIFIL, the UN Peace Corps forces, to hide from Zionist Israel, and Zionist Israel bombed them, killing them and UNIFIL forces altogether. That was in 1996, the first Qana massacre in South Lebanon. Then the second Qana massacre in 2006, which I'll get to you, because between 2000 and 2006, there were polls saying, Khalas, you don't need, Khalas means no more. Sorry, I tend to throw in some Arabic language. So they said, you don't need your weapons anymore. Zionist Israel is not occupying Lebanon, despite the fact that according to the UN and to the Lebanese law and to the Syrian law, Israel still had Shib'a farms occupied, Kfar Shuba Hills occupied. These are two different towns in South Lebanon, and Al Ghajar, which are 7 different towns also occupied. Now, during that time, America was saying, no, this is Syrian land. You should not ask for it. Syria was like, no, that's not my land. That's Lebanese land. It's not ours. I mean, Syria was saying, no, it's not ours. And it was still occupied. And we still had many Lebanese civilians and fighters detained in Israeli detention centers, kidnapped by Zionist Israel during the wartime, before 2000. We still had people incarcerated by Zionist Israel. Just like now, we have more than 21,000 Palestinians incarcerated in different prison detention centers all across occupied Palestine, including that we know of 24 Lebanese during this past war in 2024. So during that time, before the 2006 war, they're saying, why do you need your weapons? And then the 2006 war kicked off. Now, Zionist Israel said it kicked off because Hezbollah kidnapped 2 Israeli soldiers. That's not the case. Hezbollah knew through its intelligence that Zionist Israel was preparing for a ground invasion in South Lebanon. So they did a preemptive strike by kidnapping 2 Israeli soldiers from within Lebanese occupied territory, so they can have them and swap them with our own prisoners or detainees in Zionist Israel's detention centers. And the 2006 war kicked in. And it was devastating for both sides. And Hezbollah was saying to the Lebanese foes, why did you ask us to give up our weapons when you knew Zionist Israel had the capability to do that? We won that war in 2006. We were able to liberate because there was a swap after the war. We swapped, we got all of our detainees back then. 2006 till 2023, 17 years of calm because of deterrence. The Zionist Israel was not allowed to even fire a bullet into Lebanon because Lebanon was going to reciprocate. During that time, Hezbollah got involved in the global war against Syria, and they had now new experience with a new type of war, but they were exposed at the level of intelligence and commanders. Syria was the main reason why Hezbollah commanders were now known, because when you have a small country like Lebanon, small portion of that country that you as a resistance control, intelligence-wise and security-wise, when you expose yourself by going into this large country like Syria to help out the Syrian Arab army against the Takfiri terrorists and the Zionist Israel and the 82 countries that joined in to bomb Syria, you're going to be known. You're going to be using technology. You're going to be using the internet. You're going to be using your phone. So everything was being heard and seen by Zionist Israel.
Wait, just to be clear.
Now it's okay.
Wait,
yeah.
We got to circle that part.
Okay, no problem.
You were saying that effectively part of the reason that Hezbollah, or the leaders and the commanders of Hezbollah, whether it was the Patriot attacks, whether it was the bombings or something like that, was because of exposure that took place when they went to effectively fight off.
Not the Patriot attack. The Patriot attacks is something that has to do with the distribution channel of the purchases of Hezbollah. That was infiltrated in another way. But the leaders, their names, their whereabouts, the hierarchy of Hezbollah, who's the main leader, who's the second in command, who's the third, who is the Radwan forces, who are the forces that are capable of working, or that have the responsibility of working the rockets, the mid-range rockets, the long-range rockets. So all of these, it's a hierarchy. It's something extremely similar to a military. So by going into Syria, it was more exposed to Zionist Israel because of the use of technology. And we all know if you have a smartphone, anyone can catch you. What if you have the high tech that Zionist Israel has? Added to that, there was the when the October 7 Aqsa flood operation began. Whether you accept that Hezbollah had made a wise decision to open a support front or you don't, it doesn't matter, because the pager attacks was something that was brewing. Zionist Israel was able to infiltrate the distribution channel of Hezbollah as a resistance and create anonymous companies, offshore companies, to infiltrate that route of distribution and get that shipment of pagers and detonate using new technology, PTN, I think it's called, to be inserted inside of those pagers, and the batteries of it, because it was not just one day, it was 2 days. The first day was pagers, September 17, 2024. The second day, September 18, was the batteries of the walkie-talkies, and I'll tell you what happened then. But they were able to infiltrate that, some say in 2015, others say in 2021. So it doesn't matter. It's still before the 2023 October 7 Al-Aqsa flood operation. The Zionist Israel was preparing for this, the biggest terrorist attack in modern history. Biggest terrorist attack in modern history happened in Beirut on September 17, 2024, when Zionist Israel detonated in the same second 4,000 pagers, killing and wounding not only Hezbollah fighters, because the fighters don't wear the pagers. The logistics wears the pagers. The nurses wear the pagers. The teachers, because Hezbollah is not just a military. They have schools, they have universities, they have hospitals, they have daycare, they have everything, and everyone communicate with the pagers. Kids losing their eyes, kids losing their hands, women losing their eyesight, using their hands, because everyone had the pager at that time. And it was used for civilian work, not for military work. That's why, Jamal, we saw the people dropping in the streets of the capital of Beirut. I was driving back home from work, and it was the most horrifying, and I remember it and I get goosebumps. The most horrifying scene you just imagine, you now going home, driving to your home, and you just see people dropping in the streets, blood everywhere, not understanding what is going on. And it's not one, it's not two, it's 4,000. That happened on September 17. September 18, when we were able to count the dead on September 17 and prepare the funerals, during the funeral procession, the people taking care of the funeral procession, their walkie-talkie batteries exploded. Mostly everyone, it was, I think, 1,800 wounded at that time, including a very high death toll, because the battery is way bigger than the pager. So it immediately killed. And you know, the walkie-talkie is always placed on the waist, which is near vital organs in the human body. So that's how the big war kicked in. Because the support front started on October 8, 2023. I watched it live from my balcony in the town of Khiam, the town bordering occupied Palestine. And that was the last day for me in my home before Zionist Israel took over my home. They took my home, which I spent 7 years building after I spent 2 years paying for the land, which I built my house on. 7 years building it for Zionist Israel to bring their boots, bomb my house, and use it as their own military station. But I got it back, and I'm reconstructing.
Jesus. Let me ask you this. With all of that being said, meaning with that history intact and Lebanon knowing that history, how does a government get elected that is willing to disarm itself from a monster? Because look, I will tell you this, when the Iran war took place and the Pezeshkian government wanted to negotiate, and my thing was, what are you doing? These people are monsters. The United States backed these monsters. They've been running through the countryside, whether it was Syria, whether it was Iraq, whether it was Afghanistan, whether it was Libya. These were murderers, right? They had blood on their hands all the way through. Why do you think you're going to be able to negotiate with monsters? And I guess in the case of Lebanon, what of Lebanese history gives the government this notion that, hey, once you disarm, Israel is going to be love and light, and you guys are going to run together through the, sunlight?
No, they know. No, Jamal, they know. They know that this is not going to happen. They're just saying this because this gives them, in their mind, this gives them legitimacy to do what they're doing. Let's talk about how this government came to be before how this government actually decided to go on with this decision that will bring the disintegration of the Lebanese army forces. That's the first thing that it will do. But let's start how it happened. On January 9, the Lebanese president, Joseph Aoun, was elected. And the first session, he was not elected. The first session, he did not get a majority of votes in parliament because he was meeting with Hezbollah, because all of the Shia and their allies in the parliament decided not to vote for him unless he gives them written promises to rebuild, reconstruct, work to make sure that Zionist Israel stops the attacks and the aggression. Because yes, the war supposedly ended on November 27, 2024, but we are still at war. Zionist Israel still occupies our land, our airspace, our soil, and every day, we have a new assassination. So the war just stopped from the Lebanese side. It didn't stop from the Israeli side. So they made sure during that session to take promises from the president before they vote for him that he will stand with the community of the resistance and make sure. And in his statement, when he was doing his vows, he stated that. You can read that. It's published online. And they made a plan with him that he will name Najib Mikati as the prime minister. But what did he do? He met with Najib Mikati and they discussed the names of the cabinet that they will be choosing, the ministers. And then 2 days later, a paper came all the way from the United States of America saying, if you don't choose this specific person whose name is Nawaf Salam, we will make sure that your term as president be a disastrous one. So he gave in, and he named Nawaf Salam. Who's Nawaf Salam? People know him as a judge at the ICJ. Nawaf Salam was a young consultant in 1983 when the then government of Lebanon made a written agreement called the May 17 written agreement with Zionist Israel to normalize with Israel while Israel was occupying Beirut. He was part of that deal. And he was brought in. You might say, why didn't the resistance at that time say no to the president? They can, because legally, according to the Constitution, he has the right to choose whoever he wants. What he did is he reneged on the oath that he gave to the resistance, because they made sure to elect him by getting confirmation from him for reconstruction, for telling Zionist Israel, making diplomatic efforts to rid the southern part of Lebanon from the Zionist occupation, and to name this specific person, Najib Mikati, as the prime minister. He reneged, first of all, on Najib Mikati bringing Nawaf Salam. The day that Nawaf Salam was named as a prime minister, the attack against Hezbollah began. That man was brought in for a few months because by next year, by 2026, he's going to become a caretaker prime minister, because we will be preparing for parliamentary elections. So his government is not staying. He's just staying for these months. And his only job is to disarm the resistance. Hence why, when this attack began, and when he convened the cabinet, there was a paper from the president that he announced on July 29. He announced on July 29 a paper from 8 points. The first 3 points of that paper, our president said that Israel must leave the 5 occupied points in South Lebanon. Israel must stop its aggression and abide by the signed ceasefire, and reconstruction should start. Those are the first 3 points. The fourth point was disarm all factions in Lebanon, including Hezbollah. It namely mentioned Hezbollah. And there was supposed to be meetings and negotiations between the Lebanese factions about this paper to present it to the Americans so we can have a solid agreement.
Right.
Nawaf Salam Kung Fu picked that paper and brought about the paper which Tom Barrack, the US envoy to Syria and Lebanon, and who also happens to be the US ambassador in Turkey, brought a paper with one goal: disarm Hezbollah in 4 months. The ministers who are in the cabinet, who are part of the resistance, who are the Shia ministers, walked out because they tried to reason with the prime minister, and he was mocking the drones. He was mocking the assassinations. Literally, he started the session by banging on the table and saying, ding, 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 it's time. The time of truth has the clock of truth has just banged, or it's clicked. He was making fun of what is happening and smiling. So this is what the ministers are telling us. And the president did nothing, because the president has the power to stop that cabinet, because he was heading that cabinet, and he did nothing, because apparently I think he is being threatened by the Americans and the Zionists with something maybe we don't know, or maybe something as big as a civil war in Lebanon, which, by the way, cannot happen, because the people who have the arms to start a civil war are wise enough to not use it in a civil war. But this cabinet came to be by American orders to implement this decision. What did Nawaf Salam do on August 5? He said that the Lebanese army has 4 months to disarm all the factions in Lebanon, including Hezbollah. He's mad. He's out of his mind. You can't even disarm the Palestinian camps in Lebanon. You want to disarm Hezbollah? That's not going to happen, but there are many risks that we can talk about later on.
Well, you gave a fantastic breakdown. That is a breakdown that is fantastic, because the historical context matters, right? And how we got to this point is important. Yeah. And, you look and you think to yourself, this seems like they're headed or angling for civil war. And I didn't fully understand. Look, I understood the pressure that was on the government. I understood that the Lebanese military on some level seemed captured. Like they wouldn't fire a bullet in anger at the Israelis. By the same token, they're turning around saying we need to disarm Hezbollah. That seems outrageous to me. Especially given the historical context that, as you point out, the notion that you giving up your arms is going to somehow make you safer is insane. Why does no one makes that argument for Israel? Hey, if you give up your arms, you'll be safer. Give up your nukes. Give up your guns. Give up your fighter jets.
Not only that, let's make a more realistic argument. Why are the UNIFIL Peace Corps only in Lebanon? Why don't they stand on the Israeli side?
Yes.
Or the occupied Palestine? Why are they in Lebanon? Why are they disarming the only resistance capable of deterring Zionist Israel, and they are not disarming the entire border with Lebanon from the Israeli side? Why? Israel did not win this war. Israel killed the leadership of the resistance, but Israel was not able to occupy one town. They are occupying towns. They are occupying points. Points mean like small hills, 5 hills all across the border. Small hills, very wide in the open, which means one cornet rocket from the resistance would blow them out. They weren't able to advance on the ground. The ground invasion failed after 72 days of war. Why? Because we have a resistance capable of deterring Zionist Israel. Yes, Israel has F-16s, F-15s. It has the B-52, if you will. But on the ground, it was not able. In Syria, they literally jumped into Humvees, and they are now 6 or 7 kilometers away from Damascus. In Lebanon, they were not able to take my town, Khiyam, the town of Khiyam, which saw the martyrdom of 320 martyrs, 152 of them from Khiyam, Khiyamis, from my hometown, killed by Zionist Israel while they were attempting to prevent the invasion. 320 martyrs later, and Zionist Israel was still not able to neither destroy nor invade Khiyam. They were able to destroy Khiyam. During the war, Israel was able to destroy 30% of one town in Khiyam. I'm not going to talk about the other towns. My town, 30%. From November 27 till January 25, November 27, 2024, till January 25, 2025, Zionist Israel destroyed during the ceasefire 70% of my hometown. 70.
And just to be clear, that was during a ceasefire.
A ceasefire. And there were towns like Marun Ras, like Yarun, like, for example, a lot of, I'm not going to be naming them, people aren't going to understand, but right on the border, on the middle border between occupied Palestine and Lebanon, complete 100% destroyed. Beside my hometown, there's a town called Kafar Kila. It doesn't exist anymore. It does not exist anymore. That
Marwa
was done during the ceasefire. So when you talk about a civil, like this demand or policy, or if you will, order by the government given to the Lebanese army, it's not going to end up in civil war, because the only group, faction, or institution that has enough weapons to go head to head against Hezbollah is the Lebanese army, the Lebanese National Army. But the Lebanese National Army is 70% made of Shia. The Shia community is the majority in Lebanon.
Going to do that.
Which means, what do you think will happen? Will they fight? Do you think a Shia person will fight? You know what happened on Saturday? On Saturday, the Lebanese army was supposed to disarm a post for the resistance in the southern part of the Litani, which is part of the 1701 agreement, which should have happened in the presence of UNIFIL, but the UNIFIL were not there. Surprise, surprise, then a detonation happened, killing 6 Lebanese forces soldiers. So this has had something behind it. It's not a conspiracy theory. This happened before, when Zionist Israel detonated warehouses and depots for the resistance while the Lebanese army was getting in there, just to make way for the theory that it's Hezbollah who's killing them. It's Hezbollah who's showing where the depots are. How are they killing them? How is Hezbollah killing them? It was when it was the Hezbollah Islamic Association, Health Association, their ambulances were the people or the medics of Hezbollah that brought the bodies of the soldiers that were killed and martyred last Saturday. What happened then? There was the propaganda that it was Hezbollah that killed them. But the investigation that was brought about by the Lebanese forces themselves, by the Lebanese army themselves, they said, no, it was not Hezbollah. It was a detonation, and the investigations are still underway. During the funerals of those Lebanese army forces, the families of the soldiers, dead soldiers in their coffins, had Hezbollah flags in the background and Hezbollah chants, the families of the soldiers. So what do you think will happen when either the commander-in-chief of the armed forces or the government gives orders for the Lebanese National Armed Forces to fire at Hezbollah? What do you think will happen?
I think
my theory is, since the Lebanese armed forces are 70% Shia, the Lebanese army forces will disintegrate.
Or overthrow. I mean, and this could be the last question. Is there any chance that if that order is given, if that push is made by the president, or let's say by the prime minister, that there is a change of power? Whether it's Hezbollah taking over or whether it's, meaning, because I agree
there
with
might
your point.
be, because Hezbollah is adamant.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. Hezbollah is adamant on not firing a single bullet against the Lebanese army. Even if the Lebanese army fires, if they bring the 30% that are not Shia to stand in the face of Hezbollah, which will lead to the disintegration of the army, as I said, Hezbollah will, instead of fighting back, will go ahead and remove the people in power from government and from the presidential palace. And that's something that is very risky. It's very dangerous. It means an entire coup in Lebanon. And honestly, it's a bit late. It's too late, but it's never too late though. I think that Hezbollah, any resistance in the world, in history, that won, after Hezbollah won in the year 2000, not 2006, in the year 2000, liberated the land, gave away thousands of soldiers who were killed to defend the land, protected and liberated. In any sane country around the world, the resistance should have taken power of the country. Look at what happened in France, for example, after the French Revolution. What did the resistance do? Right? So we had every legal, divine right to take power. But what did the resistance do? They said, we want a unified Lebanon. Even those who are known to be agents of Zionist Israel, Lebanese people who worked with Zionist Israel during the occupation, we forgive them. Not one was even imprisoned. Not one. Why? Because this is the most moral resistance you will ever see in your life, Jamal.
But this time,
this is the resistance that throughout the war, all throughout the war, as we were being bombed by American-made weapons with pure tax money, I'm sorry to say, while we were being bombed by American bombs dropped by Zionist Israel, the resistance was still retaliating at military sites inside of Israel. They did not. Israel was bombing hospitals. Hezbollah did not reciprocate. Didn't they have the weapon to do so? Yes. But in our ideology, it is haram, which means it's illegal in religion to kill civilians, even if they are your enemy.
I saw that with Iran, by the way, where
Exactly.
immoral
Because it's
war.
the idea. And
Yeah.
for me, I am a Shia Muslim. I follow this ideology, but in war with Zionist Israel, who have shown the entire world, not us, because we've been fighting with the Haganah since 1936. The world didn't care about us. We've been fighting and with massacre after massacre during the 60s, 70s, 80s. In my hometown in the 60s, you know what they did in Khiyam? I wasn't even born yet. They used to, well, while they were occupying the area, they used to get all the elderlies, place them in the town square and shoot them dead because they refused to leave. We have scores of stories to tell. But although throughout these decades, the past 22 months, the entire world was watching in a magnifier what Zionist Israel is capable of doing and how the world is complicit by being silent. So we know that Zionist Israel is capable of that. And me being a Shia Muslim woman that I am, I do abide and follow these terms, but I think sometimes when you are met with something as evil as Zionist Israel, you have to cross some red lines or else you will be annihilated. But it's not
Marwa,
up to me. It's up to, see, that's why it's not up to me. It's up to the people who are wise enough to take the right decision.
I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you. I'm just gonna say I agree with you. I've gotten very dark over the course of these last.
It's not dark. It's justice, Jamal. Justice. Can you imagine? I don't know if you have kids. I have 3 of my own.
Yeah.
Okay. I have 3 kids of my own. I've watched people in Gaza, men, tall, strong men, break down, holding nylon bags with the arms and legs of their children that were butchered by Zionist Israel, taking them to the cemetery to bury them. I've watched that. What do you think? What do you think that does to a parent in Lebanon, for example, who was watching this and then started hearing bombs falling outside? People might say this radicalizes you. No, 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 no. This wakes you up to the most important thing in life as a human. Protect your children. And protecting my children means finding a safe place, then going back to fight those that are bringing this unsafety and this aggression against my children. I'm not going to sit down and start screaming and crying, please someone help us protect. No. Even if I have my bare hands, I'm going to protect my kids if it means me dying while doing so. Not going to wait for anyone to help protect me, because we've been waiting since 1936 and nothing happened. On the contrary, Arab regimes now bombs. You know, in Beirut during the past war, it was not only Zionist Israeli warplanes that were bombing us, it was Zionist Israeli warplanes, American warplanes, British warplanes, Jordanian warplanes, Emirati warplanes.
Marwa,
Do your research, you can find out. So Arabs, Westerners, and Haganah terrorists were bombing me for taking a decision on October 8th saying, I will defend Gaza, stop bombing Gaza. They want to strip us of our humanity. They want to strip us of our right to defend ourselves. And then they want to call us radicalized because we choose to do so. You can call us whatever you want. Reality on the ground will not change the fact that you are butchers. You are the epitome of evil, and you have the protection of the entire Western world. Zionist Israel on its own cannot have a 7-front war. It is a global war against people who decide to resist. This is the reality.
Agreed. I agree. And this is a good point to end it on. You have my full agreement on this. Thank you for this. Honestly, thank you for this. Marwa Osman, I think I got that right.
Osman.
She's a journalist. Said it one more time.
Marwa Osman.
Okay. Marwa Osman.
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 Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Journalist, TV host for Press TV, university lecturer, and political commentator. You have my deepest thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
Thank you for having me. You too. Bye-bye.
Absolutely.